Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into something today that, well, it could really flip how you think about language completely.
It's definitely provocative.
Our source is an interview with Mahmudjon Kuchkarov called Epic Debate: Groundbreaking Insights into the Origins of Human Language. And this isn't your standard linguistic chat. Kuchkarov is pushing a, let's say, very radical idea. Basically, that language structure isn't about word roots like we usually learn.
Right. He says it's based on sounds, fundamental sounds.
And it gets even bigger. The claim is that all languages everywhere come from just one source.
And that source, according to the theory presented in this interview, is Turkic.
Wow. Okay, so that's the core idea we're digging into, sticking strictly to what's in this interview. Linguistic monogenesis, but specifically Turkic.
Exactly. A single origin across Europe, Asia, the Americas, all pointing back to Turkic, based on his sound theory.
So our mission here is clear. We're going to unpack Kuchkarov's theory as presented in the interview. We'll look at the claims, the examples he uses, the evidence he puts forward.
And why he feels it just fundamentally challenges how linguistics usually operates.
Yeah. So get ready, because this might shake up some of your ideas about where words actually come from.
It's definitely designed to do that.
Okay, let's jump in. The source introduces Mahmudjon Kuchkarov and his theory, which he calls human language. The Turkic is Odam Tili.
Odam Tili, right.
Oh.
And he frames it as revolutionary, but also empirical, based on observation.
So what's the absolute core of it?
The central idea is pretty striking.
Yeah.
He argues language has this fundamental elementary structure. He compares it to how matter has atoms.
Like building blocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But instead of atoms, for language.
It's sounds, not word roots.
Precisely. He argues the basic units aren't roots, but specific fundamental sounds, the smallest bits of language that actually carry independent meaning, according to him.
Okay, sounds as building blocks, but why certain sounds? What makes a sound special in this theory? This is where it really breaks from the usual thinking, right?
Totally. Conventional linguistics usually points to the root, that abstract core meaning. Kuchkarov flips it. He says the sound itself is key. The interview lays out criteria for these special sounds. They have to be natural, systematic, and repetitive.
Natural, systematic, repetitive.
Okay. Yeah, he argues these sounds come from really basic human experiences, like involuntary sounds people make under stress, maybe, or sounds that come from humans interacting with objects in the world. And the theory goes that these sounds get encoded. Basically, a link forms between the sound itself, the phonetic bit, and how it's made, or the thing is linked to the form, and the feeling or action tied to it, the meaning.
So finding meaning in the sound tied to the physical world.
That's the essence of it. Very different from abstract roots.
It really is a massive shift. So how's this been received? The interview title mentions an epic debate. Is it catching on?
Well, based on what Kuchkarov says in the source, it's been tough going. He mentions that before 2011, he submitted work to conferences, and it was, well, largely ignored.
Ouch.
But then, starting around 2020, things shifted a bit. He says articles and theses based on his theory started getting accepted at international conferences. He lists for Ghana in 2020, London 2022, New York 2023.
So some traction, but maybe slow.
Yeah, he acknowledges that himself in the interview. It's still a relatively small number of publications for such a grand theory. He knows adoption is slow.
Does he say why he thinks it's been so slow?
He gives a couple of reasons in the source. One is just that any really revolutionary idea inevitably bumps up against the existing way of thinking, the established paradigm.
Right, people have built careers on the old models.
Exactly. He suggests that accepting a completely new framework can feel like it undermines the work, maybe even the credibility, built on the old one. So there's natural resistance.
Makes sense. Any other reason?
He also makes an interesting point about what he values. He says he actually prefers engaging with the public, getting criticism out in the open, rather than just focusing on academic acceptance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, his view seems to be that if a theory doesn't resonate with people, if it doesn't spark discussion outside academia, then piling up publications doesn't mean much. It needs public life, basically.
Okay, that philosophical point leads us nicely into maybe the most provocative claim from the source. Monogenesis, this idea that language started just once, across huge areas like Europe, Asia, the Americas.
Yes. The theory doesn't just claim monogenesis, a single origin. It's much more specific than that.
How so?
According to Kuchkarov, as presented in the source, the very idea of different languages, as we normally think of them, is flawed. He argues there's really only one fundamental human language.
Only one.
That's the claim. And that single original human language, The source says he identifies it as Turkic.
Wow. Okay, so all the complex words we use now in English, Spanish, whatever,
are seen as evolving from combinations of those basic phonetic symbols, those sounds, all tracing back to this original Turkic structure. That's the theory's assertion.
Right. This is where we absolutely need to look at the evidence presented in the source. How does he actually connect this grand theory, and specifically Turkic, to the words we all use today? What examples does he give?
Yeah, this is crucial. He offers several examples to show his phonetic analysis in action. One really intriguing interpretation he mentions is the story of Adam, Eve, the serpent, and the apple tree.
The Genesis story.
Yeah. He suggests, within his theory's framework, that this story isn't literally about creating the world. He reads it as an allegory for the creation of language itself.
Okay, that's different. What about more direct word examples?
He gives the example of the word church. He traces it back to a Turkic word, church.
Church.
Yeah, which he says means a stick placed at the peak, like to cho'qqiga or Natulgan chirp. He connects the sound to the idea of something high, pointed at a peak.
Okay. The source goes into quite a bit of detail on the word nature, right? Let's spend some time there.
Definitely. He picks nature because it's such a globally used term, the name of a major science journal. Seems fundamental.
So how does he break it down?
Phonetically, through his Turkic lens. He proposes na means an object, reverse it, and it relates to spatial existence. He connects that to Anna in Turkic, meaning mother, or significantly space.
Okay. Na is object, anon is space.
Then tur. He says this refers to a tree, and a again signifies space.
So putting it together, natur.
Following his breakdown of the source, it translates in his system to something like the existence of a tree in space.
But he makes a point about tur, doesn't he? It's not just tree, the object.
Exactly. That's key. He argues tur doesn't just mean the tree itself, but its essential property, its verticality, its upright stance.
Verticality, okay.
It connects the sound T and even the visual shape of the letter T to this core concept of being vertical, standing tall.
How does he support that T equals verticality connection? It seems like a leap.
He offers several bits of what he considers evidence in the source. He mentions an Uzbek word, yolt, that's a U-E-T. He describes it as the body moving from a vertical T position to a more flowing horizontal yolt state, like water. He also points to the sharp T sound made when a tree breaks, linking the sound to the vertical thing snapping.
Yeah.
And maybe the T shape of the break.
Okay.
And another one, quite unexpected, is the I sound. Like when you hiccup, he links that sharp vertical sound, I, to the vertical line of the letter I.
Hiccups to I, that's creative.
It is.
Yeah.
And he extends this verticality idea to names like I in English, or names like Adi, Ali in other languages.
Easter Jeff.
These signify humans, possibly linking back to our upright posture, our inherent verticality.
Wow.
And one more piece, ancient burial markers, often just wooden crosses, right? He says these symbolize stillness, a quality of a tree, its vertical stillness, and that this imagery was later adopted as a Christian symbol. It's quite a chain he builds around tur and verticality.
That's a lot to absorb. Linking T sounds to hiccups, letter shapes, posture, burial crosses. Okay. What about other sounds? The source mentions yo and I being connected to water reflections.
That's the next cluster of examples, He links sounds like yo and I to the idea of reflection, like seeing yourself in water.
How?
Well, he draws lines between words like dario, which means river in Uzbek, then yo, which means I in Spanish and Russian, and I, meaning moon, in Turkic, the moon reflecting on water, perhaps.
Okay, I see the reflection theme.
The logic he presents is this. Imagine someone looking into still water. They see the reflection, their own image staring back.
Right.
He argues this very basic universal experience led to these sounds, yo, ya, maybe I, becoming associated with self-identity, me, showing up in Spanish, yo, Russian, ya, English, I, and he argues in Turkic, I.
Wait, does I actually mean I in modern Turkic? I thought men was I.
Good point. He anticipates this objection in the interview. He counters it by pointing to Turkic, specifically Uzbek, verb forms. Like bore, meaning I will go, or kile, meaning I will come. See the I ending. He argues that I element is linked to the first person singular there.
Ah, okay, in the verb ending.
Exactly. And he also brings up aynek, the Uzbek word for mirror, again reinforcing that connection. I, sound, reflection, self. It's his way of showing the sound is present and tied to the concept of self or reflection in Turkic, even if it's not the standalone word for I today.
Got it. Okay. What other examples does he use to tie words back to Turkic sounds?
He brings up the word material. Seems pretty fundamental, right?
Yeah.
He argues it comes from the Turkic word teri.
Teri, which means...
Skin.
Yeah.
T-E-R-I, skin.
Okay. How does he connect skin to material?
His explanation is pretty straightforward. Skin, along with wood maybe, was one of the very first, most basic materials humans used. For clothing, shelter, everything.
Makes sense historically.
And he points out that the study of skin is dermatology. See the der or tear sound. He says it retains that link to the original material, the skin.
Dermatology. Tabli. Okay, I see the phonetic link he's drawing. And there was one more sound he broke down. Ma.
Yes, the ma sound.
What's the significance there?
In Turkic, he says ma signifies giving, the act of giving.
How does he get giving from ma?
He breaks it down phonetically again. M, he relates to the hand, the shape or action of the hand. A, as we saw with nature, represents space.
Hand, space.
So ma literally represents extending your hand into space to offer something, to give.
Okay.
And he connects this fundamental concept, giving, directly to the word for mother, mama, in Turk.
Right.
The ultimate giver, the source of life and sustenance, linking maternal care to that basic ma sound of giving.
Right. So these are some pretty detailed, if unconventional, phonetic derivations he's presenting, tracing common words back to what he claims are original Turkic sounds and concepts. Which brings us back to the big question the interview raises.
Why hasn't everyone else noticed?
Exactly. If Turkic is supposedly the root of everything, why isn't this common knowledge? Why isn't it the basis of linguistics?
He offers two main explanations in the source. The first one we touched on earlier, timing. He basically says, look, this empirical theory, his specific way of analyzing sounds, is very recent. It just wasn't formulated before.
Okay, fair enough. What's the second reason?
The second one is more historical and involves a deliberate action, according to his claims in the source.
Oh.
He claims that Turkic ancestors, way back, consciously withheld certain key sounds when they interacted linguistically with other groups. He specifically lists sounds like Q, like a guttural K, G, another guttural, and H.
They deliberately didn't share certain sounds. Why?
The source doesn't elaborate deeply on the why, but focuses on the what. His argument is that because these sounds were withheld, or maybe just lost or altered during linguistic exchange, the original phonetic elements got obscured as words traveled into other languages. The clarity of the Turkic origin was lost.
Can you give an example he uses for that?
Yeah, he mentions the Uzbek word yozik, meaning writing. He suggests that as this concept moved elsewhere, it might have morphed into something like skelet. He relates it to skeleton, the framework, but the crucial initial Q sound from yozik, which has a Q sound in it, was dropped.
So the link becomes harder to see.
Exactly. Another example he gives is quandal, meaning candle in Uzbek. Again, that initial Q sound often disappeared when the word or concept was borrowed, obscuring the trail back to the proposed Turkic source.
Wow. Okay. It's certainly a complex and deeply unconventional theory, the way it connects sounds, physical shapes, actions, historical stories. It's really not how traditional linguistics works at all.
Not typically, no.
So we've taken this deep dive into the interview source, explored Kuchkarov's main claims, language built on sounds, not roots. All language is one. That one language is Turkic. And looked at his specific interpretations of words like nature, church, material.
Yeah, it definitely makes you pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes you reconsider the absolute fundamentals of how we communicate.
It does.
I mean, if you entertain this possibility, just for a moment, the idea presented in the source that sounds rooted in basic human experience are the real building blocks. How might that change how you analyze language or history? Or even just the words you use every single day?
That's the big takeaway question, isn't it? Does hearing about this theory make you listen differently to the actual sounds inside the words?
It's definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
And the source does mention, if you are interested in exploring this further, directly from the source's perspective.
Where can people look?
Apparently you can find live streams from the OTA, that's the Academy of Human Language, on YouTube. Or look for the Facebook channel named after Mahmudjon Kuchkarov himself.
Right. Good to know where to find more if this has piqued your curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into a theory that, frankly, challenges the very essence of how we think about language. Lots to mull over.